Hi, everybody. This is episode 2 of our series on was Luke Acts, written to convince a pagan judge to advocate an acquittal from Nero in the pending appeal that was pending at the end of the book of Acts. That's Paul's appeal that he made to Nero, and a very convincing and beyond convincing proof is in the book by John Mauck. So we are going to review that book. This is a book from 2001. It's the prior episode showed you all the positive reviews, professors who use it in class, other people saying it'll totally change your perspective on the book of Acts, particularly, and that is a crucial thing for those in the Jesus Words Only movement, because this gives us a better look at that very decisive early point in time and why it's written and why it looks like it's to make Paul a hero, when in fact what it really is trying to defend him and Christianity from being delegitimized, remove our legal protection that Rome has to grant you. You don't have automatic free speech in those days. You had to be a religion that was approved, and we were under the Judaism's approval. Anyway, so let's get into episode 2 pretty quickly here. So this is the introduction, and it's actually quite important. And introductions are always important in everything, like in a trial, the opening statement you give to a jury. So this attorney is following a method that lawyers know. It's not what you put in the middle of the book that matters. It's what do you put up front. And he does a very good job of showing you some very decisive facts to hook you in. And so he tells you one of the first things that happens. Intrigued, he started doing research electronically, and he's just amazed at what you can get on the internet. And he goes, I located at Tufts University Classics website a search. He made an extensive database of Greek and Roman writers using English, Latin, or Greek words to quickly locate the usage of the words most excellent among the authors. Well, why is he doing that? Because both Luke and Acts are addressed to Theophilus, most excellent Theophilus. Why would you call him most excellent Theophilus? Does this tell us anything about who he was, the recipient? It was a single individual. That's pretty narrow. And the Bible teachers had generally been right on this point. That is, that the word most excellent is a form of address used primarily as a title for rulers or for government officials, except the obsequious Cicero, who would call a cow madame. He likes humor, so he's going to throw in a small anecdote there. But the point is that most excellent meant the person was a ruler or a government official, and so he's building his case slowly but surely. And then he, just thanks God, basically, and I do too, for the retrieval ability, for the ability to synthesize information at remarkable speed. 2001 is, quite a long time ago, but it was still pretty amazing. The internet was very useful then. And then he was able to access the magnum opus on Acts during the 1990s that was made, a 5-volume series by Eerdmans containing titles on Acts in its literary, Greco-Roman, Palestinian, and diaspora settings. It utilizes dozens of experts with disciplines ranging from numismatics to Greek linguistics, as well as presenting a thorough analysis of Roman legal procedures by Brian Rapsky in a separate volume called Paul in Roman Custody. So the groundwork had been laid by scholars, people who spent, could be decades to just dig into one small detail. This is perfect for a lawyer, because our job usually is to synthesize all these various experts to deal with a single issue that we're focused in on. And it's all there, but you know what? Normally it'd be inaccessible with the internet. This book is now online. I'm sure he got it online, or he could have it scanned. I have all my books scanned, so I can scan in OCR all the pages. So, and I want to put in a plug for $1 scan, because they are very inexpensive, very professional. They can convert your book for $3, $4 maybe. And now you have it permanently. It's electronic, and you can see the difference. I'm able to highlight things and show you what they all are. So I did that with all my books, and we don't have any books in the house anymore. Actually, we have a few books, physical books, but primarily they're all electronic. So he found this was such a radical change, and the accessibility to this stuff, and he's utilized it to the hilt. Okay, so then he gets into this issue, and this is to me very important, and this is what's radical. Does the ending of Acts have anything to do with why it was written? Nobody ever paid attention to the end of Acts. It ends, he's waiting for trial. So if you think about it, when you get to the end of a book, doesn't that tell you what was really going on when the book was written? The entire focus of the book from beginning to end was written with this trial in mind, and there was still 2 years left before, they'd already been there 2 years. So he's been working on this book for a long period of time already in Rome when this book is produced. And he had to probably go to Caesarea to do the translation of the Hebrew Matthew, which is what it really looks like to do the book of Luke. And so, yeah. So let's just read how he puts it. It was okay. The dynamics of what Luke wrote, resurrections, miracles, persecutions, etc., have obscured the dynamics of why he wrote. The question which generations of scholars have posed and to which no self-evident answer has been found is why was Acts written? Culminating with Paul, the mentor of the author, Luke, in prison awaiting trial before Nero, one must ask, does the ending of Acts have anything to do with why it was written? Well, of course it did. How did we all I put it in the top of my note. Obvious, but an overlooked answer. In other words, probably because we didn't get, we could only guess or conjecture, well, what is it for? Well, he's showing you bit by bit. He already showed you the address of the person receiving it. Theophilus, most excellent Theophilus, tells you he's a Roman official. He's a government official. Well, we're waiting for an appeal. I mean, it doesn't take a brain scientist then to connect the dots. So, this is over, how can I put it? It's overdue that we came to this conclusion. It's not that hard to even see it without much evidence, more evidence, but he has a lot more. Luke was neither an historian nor a theologian in any modern sense. That's another thing. He doesn't come off as any famous person. He's only famous because he wrote these things, but he came, he did what he had to do to help the church get the appeal done, get I wonder if he's not a doctor of laws, and maybe people mistakenly called him a doctor of medicine, but in Roman times they called lawyers juris doctors, doctors of the law. So maybe that's really what it was. That's my conjecture. Although he wrote an account of events which occurred, that is the history, it was not intended primarily for future students or for scholars of his generation. And here is what I think is key and what is radical. Nor was he seeking to teach or encourage his fellow Christians. This book was not written for Christians. It was written for a pagan. And that's why, I say it again, that's why Paul on Mars Hill will say things that are radical and inconsistent with the Bible. He's saying God does not dwell in temples made of human hands, a biblical falsehood. He lived at the temple made of human hands at Jerusalem. But why did Luke include something that would make us as Christians revulse at Paul as a false, biblically stating false things? Because we have to win a trial. This is not about whether Paul is right or wrong. This is not about vindicating Paul for Christians' sake. This is about winning a trial where everything was at risk. Christianity was completely at risk of being held an illegal religion because Paul went into the temple. He was asked by James just to go, please, just go help these few guys do their Nazarite vow. What do you know? The next thing that happens is Paul's friend from Ephesus walks through the middle wall of separation at the temple, violates and defiles the temple. The crowds go crazy. It becomes a Hazarai, and all hell broke loose. And now all of Christianity is threatened because now the Jews are saying we are a rebellious a sect. We don't really follow Judaism. We believe Gentiles can go in uncircumcised into the temple, blah 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 blah. And remember, this all began in Acts 21:21, where James says, Paul, I've heard rumors that you are an apostate and you're even teaching Jews don't have to be circumcised. So we're already at the edge where the Jews are saying, hey, we have some information here, James, you apparently don't know about, that he's teaching false doctrine, that we're not, there's no more Jews. We don't exist. And therefore we don't have to circumcise our children. This is radical. You guys are radical. So Jerome wanted to tamper that all down. That's why he sent them to the temple. And this happens. So it all's blowing up in James's face due to Paul's behavior with Trophimus's Trophimus was listening to Paul saying the middle wall of separation has been removed at the temple. He said that in Ephesians chapter 2, I think it is. And this is where Trophimus came from Ephesus, and that's his buddy, and they traveled together all the way to get here, and he ends up defiling the temple. But we must continue. And then he says this: I contend that Luke investigated, gathered facts, borrowed from other sources, and edited them for a different and definite purpose. He wrote a legal brief to defend Paul against charges of fomenting civil insurrection, right? And by extension, to defend all of Christianity against the charge that it was an illegal religion. By the way, I think Luke's whole aim was to try to downplay the fact that the temple had been defiled and make it all about the anger and upset of all the people, and so that even the Roman officials would not be sure what was actually going on here. So he mentions the defilement and mentions Trophimus was accused of defiling the temple, and then he gives Paul's alibi that I wasn't with him when that happened, blah, 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 blah. But Luke is very happy to try to do exactly what Paul's doing, is try to kind of skirt that issue. You mentioned it, and Paul got his alibi in, and that's crucial for the trial upcoming. But otherwise, you want to make it's all about these people being upset about about nothing. And Romans don't believe you can defile a temple in an uncircumcised state going into a temple. They do it all the time. So they would probably think that's even an irrational factor, and they could easily dismiss it and not realize how important it was to the Jewish people. Because God in Ezekiel, I think it's 37, says, if you have a Gentile enter my temple uncircumcised, it's an abomination. So it's an abomination of what? Desolation, according to Daniel. So anybody want to try to imagine what other consequences this is in terms of Bible prophecy about the abomination of desolation? That's another issue, and I think that's why God also preserved Luke Acts for us. So this circumstance of Paul going to the temple, even though it backfired on James, it actually preserved something historical that now Christians have ignored the fact that Trophimus abominated the temple. Everybody looks the other way. But that is a fact now. We can see, did the prophecy of Daniel come true? So that's a whole nother issue. We're not going into it now. But for Paul doing what he did, causing this Hazarai, the book of Luke, the book of Acts would never have been written. So, and the book of Luke, by the way, also preserves a lot of the Hebrew Matthew that for some reason didn't get into the Greek Matthew, and that's a whole nother issue of why that happened. So, but he has a lot of unique stories that are very good. The parable of the publican and the sinner. The one that goes home justified is the one that repents from his sin, not the one who pats himself on the back and doesn't repent. So, I mean, that's a very Jesus approach, not a very Pauline approach. So anyway, I digress. So anyway, let's keep going here. So his original reader, Theophilius, the evidence will show the Roman official responsible for the judicial investigation of trials to be conducted before the Emperor Nero. Luke, true to his reputation as an evangelist, crafted his brief to present the gospel so that even the very investigator would come to believe in Jesus. Yes, so that was good. And anybody else who read the book of Luke. So it had a multitask purpose. And I think it was coming from the church, James and those guys, because to gain access to the Hebrew Matthew, which is clearly, Evans did a book recently called The Synoptic Tradition and the Hebrew Matthew, very excellent book. And he shows that the book of Luke actually has more in common with the quotations of the Hebrew Matthew than even does the Greek Matthew. So think about that. That's why I say it was significant that Irenaeus mentions that the Ebionites, which is our original church's name as it succeeded in time, even beyond the lifetime of the apostles and James, that they believe that the book of Luke can be read by Christians. So that should be a real reminder to us that the book of Luke was engendered by the original church's need to protect ourselves in this trial. So they gave all their assistance possible to Luke, and that included access at Caesarea to the library there to have the Hebrew Matthew, which was kept, I don't want to say, we don't know if it was lock and key, but they obviously were protecting it. And so they would let people come in and make copies and translate it, apparently. Okay. So now here's another topic he has. To the modern Christian who believes Scripture to be inspired by God, this book will be helpful, disquieting, and possibly radical. Helpful as it enables the reader to understand the who, when, where, and why of this longest book of the New Testament and to better apply the message to his or her life and faith. Disquieting as it echoes the question asked of lovers of sausage and law. See, he's funny. Are you sure you want to watch it being made? And radical in that 21st century reader's Christian identity or understanding of what a Christian is may require reconsideration. So he's telling you this is a book that can fundamentally reorient how you think about what it means to be a Christian. And I think what he's really saying is, and he'll show you in the next panel here, that this is digging into a period of time in the Christian the growth of Christianity, which is at the very earliest part, and we don't realize it, but all the letters are basically, 20 years after the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus and ascension. So this book fills in that period of time before any epistles are written. Basically, Paul is going to be writing his epistles right around this time. He's written 3 by the time of the temple chaos. I think it's the Thessalonians, um, Galatians was his very first. So it was Galatians, Thessalonians, and I think First Corinthians had been written. Maybe Second Corinthians is on the way. So he's basically has some big career coming because he has Romans and Philippians and others are all coming up. So this book was written about a period of time that's before all these epistles are written, and it's that earliest moment where you can actually see how the 12 operated under James. There was a what if we didn't know about the 12th apostle from Matthias? So I think this was God's providence that we'd see this. So this will help, as he says, change our understanding of what it means to be a Christian. And then he's going to re-examine something that I think is very risky for him to say he was going to do this. Well, he says there's a lot of treasures that have been overlooked in previous explorations. So there's some treasures. He's giving us a hint. But then he says much of the analysis of the many events recounted in Acts will examine their veracity from a lawyer's perspective. And I don't know if he's going to do it to the same hilt that the Bible requires, which is, usually you need 2 witnesses for things. So we'll see about that. And I'm not sure I would be that rigid with the history, this kind of history. This is not a legal case, where everything has to be proven by 2 witnesses, and it's not establishing. But whenever there's an important fact for history, like Paul's appearance accounts, those have to have 2 witnesses. But not because I have anything against Paul particularly. It's just those are the kind of events that need that. It's Jesus' baptism had multiple witnesses. All the apostles that were picked later, 12, if you read Acts 1, you'll see they were all picked because they had all been there at John the Baptist's, the baptism of Jesus in front of him, and they saw the Holy Spirit come down on Jesus. So that was a requirement to pick the 12th apostle, that he was one of them all the way from the beginning of John the Baptist, as all the other 11 were. Did you know that? So that's another thing. You read Acts and you learn these little tidbits. So let's just see, is there anything else here? Oh, this was helpful to hear. He then examines the chronology. He tells us about the chronology, and we don't think about this, and I was alluding to it earlier. Beyond its central placement within the physical text of the New Testament, Acts is pivotal in the New Testament because of this. 1, chronology. The Gospels tell of the life and passion of Jesus. Acts pick up where they leave off. The letters do not begin until about 20 years after the resurrection. Yes, I was alluding to this. So Acts spans the period from the resurrection of about 30 AD. It's really more like 32 AD about AD 62. In many respects, it is the only record of the believers in Jesus during the formative years of the church. So he's right. There's no other record. There's nothing in any epistles, even by Paul, that actually reflects this period of time. And look how much is going on. And then 2, it has an importance on theology. While the letters instruct believers how to live and why, Acts balances those teachings by describing how the believers, and particularly certain leaders, actually lived, without directing the reader how he or she must live. Rightly understanding Acts is thus an indispensable link in understanding both the Gospels and the letters and how they relate to each other. So That's a little mysterious. Not sure what he means. We're going to find out. But it sounds like this book is a very foundational. It can become a foundational book for you to understand and interpret the New Testament. It's really, really one of the more significant books. So I'm going to share one last slide with you. So I'm going to actually recommend everybody get a copy of this book. It's not that expensive. It's $13 or $14 is the maximum price, I think, um, on Amazon for a used version of it. Uh, and you can see if you go to other book places, it's $1.56 for a used copy. So if you're interested enough in it, because there's just so much I'm going to put on the internet because I don't want to infringe on this man's copyright. I want to also reward him by getting people to go buy the book, and so he's going to not be agitated if we're doing this book review and studying it together, if we're helping promote the book being sold. But I'm not doing it to help him that way. I actually think this book is a foundational book for any Christian to own. It could change how you look at everything. And so here's what I'm going to do here is the now I'm not making the book available, but I'm going to put this link to this Airtable page. Excuse me, this Airtable page, and it's where the title of the book exists. It says sample for sharing, and that's just the introduction. The forward, excuse me, the forward. It's a few pages by some person who wrote a forward for him, and I think it's 4 or 5 pages, and it has a title page and everything. So you can read that. The forward is very good too. And then I'm putting a PDF of these lessons in there. So I printed out all these slides to a PDF that you can then read and look at the language we were reading together tonight. And I hope to keep doing that in the future. And then you can keep coming back to the same link, and I'll put this link in every episode we do from here on, so that you can see what um, you can have a record of some physical record of what's transpiring here. But I think you'll be happy too if you got a copy of the full book and you could make your own notes and commentary and read it at your leisure, because I'm skipping over whole things. We've just done we were up to page 11 there. You did not look at 11 pages, so I had to skim over a lot of material that really I enjoyed reading it, but again, I don't want to expropriate the book completely. I want to just give you the best highlights I can find. Okay, I hope this was informative, and I hope you'll find this continuing to be of interest to you. It is very interesting to me, so I'm going to keep doing it. And so far it's gotten actually good response from a lot of you, and I hope to hear that you're enjoying it. So take care, God bless, and have a great Shabbat tomorrow.